chosen one. Have you ever felt like your soul was dragged through the mud for no reason, like life flipped on you overnight and every eye was on you just to watch you fall? Well, what if I told you that wasn't life falling apart? That was ritual warfare, and you survived it. Why did they target you so specifically, so ruthlessly? What was it about you that made them need to see you humiliated, broken, exposed, abandoned? And most importantly, how did you walk through that fire and come out with clearer vision? There once was a woman, pure-hearted, radiant with light. She walked into rooms and people smiled until one day they didn't. Rumors spread, friends turned, family disappeared. She lost her job, her love, and her name in 1 year flat. Not because she did anything wrong, but because she did everything right. Her light irritated their demons, so they launched a full-blown humiliation ritual. She was publicly shamed, lied on, and left to rot. But in the darkness, something activated inside her. Discernment. She started seeing who was who smiled with a knife behind their back, who loved her in the light but hated her in silence. And when she stopped begging for understanding, she found her crown. Now she walks like a weapon in heels, not because she's angry, but because she's awake. That woman is you, chosen one. You didn't go through a breakdown. You went through a spiritual test. The humiliation ritual you survived wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And your discernment, that wasn't paranoia, it was your God-given radar saving your life. In this video, we're diving deep into what the humiliation ritual really is. Why chosen ones like you are always selected for this dark ceremony, and how your discernment, your divine inner compass, wasn't just helpful, it was life-saving. I'll be sharing the 7 signs that prove you've survived it, and the blessings you've unlocked because of it. As it says in Psalm 118:22, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. So don't click away, chosen one, because by the end of this video, not only will you understand what you went through, but you'll finally honor yourself for the strength, the wisdom, and the divine radar that saved you. Let's awaken together. Point 1. The humiliation ritual is real and it's spiritual warfare. First things first, chosen one. What you went through wasn't some chaotic accident or random misfortune. No, it was divinely calculated. That mess, that storm that flipped your life upside down. That wasn't just bad luck, it was what many spiritual teachers refer to as a soul-stripping, ego-crushing experience wrapped in the ordinary disasters of life. Maybe it came as betrayal by someone you trusted, a sudden loss of employment, a health crisis that hit without warning, or even a mental and emotional breakdown that left you feeling like a ghost in your own life. But let's be clear, this wasn't designed to end you. It was designed to awaken you. In the ancient mystery schools and throughout biblical history, this type of spiritual trial has always served as an initiatory phase, one where the soul is purified through affliction. You might be surprised to learn that figures like Job, Joseph, Moses, and even Jesus went through similar seasons of public or private stripping. In each case, God allowed a descent before orchestrating the ascent. This is what sets apart the chosen. They are refined by fire, not destroyed by it. The humiliation ritual isn't about being embarrassed in front of people. It's a divine dismantling of all false identities. When your world starts falling apart, it's not chaos, it's choreography. God is allowing the breaking to make space for building. When the people you love turn away, when your name is dragged through the mud, when your reputation shatters like glass, that isn't your end. That is the sacred beginning. It's in these moments of raw vulnerability that God begins to whisper your real name, the one no crowd ever cheered for, the one heaven recognizes. When God is about to elevate you, He first humbles you, not out of cruelty, but out of mercy. Pride, ego, and attachment to worldly approval are weights that can't survive the next level. They must be burned off. And so God leads you into the wilderness, into the cave, into the storm. You're not being punished, you're being purified. Think of it like spiritual boot camp. No one becomes a general without enduring the battlefield. No one gets anointed without first being emptied. And let's not ignore the spectators. While you suffered, there were people who laughed. Some even celebrated your downfall. But they didn't realize they were watching your consecration. You weren't being crushed. You were being crowned in silence. Heaven wasn't quiet because it didn't care. Heaven was quiet because it was watching you pass the test. The silence of God during your storm wasn't abandonment. It was assessment. He was seeing if you would cling to Him when everything else fell away. Look at the lives of Moses and David. Moses was exiled to the desert for 40 years before leading a nation. David was hunted like an animal before becoming king. Even Jesus, the Son of God, faced public humiliation, rejection, and crucifixion before resurrection. The pattern is consistent. The path to glory always passes through grief. So when your mirror didn't recognize you anymore, when your achievements, titles, and comforts were gone, what was left was your essence, that raw, untamed, sacred version of you that's no longer addicted to applause, no longer driven by fear. That version of you, that's the real chosen one. This wasn't your downfall. It was your awakening. The battlefield you found yourself on wasn't accidental, it was assigned. Your pain was not punishment, it was preparation. The humiliation was not a curse, it was a consecration. And as for those who laughed at your brokenness, they'll soon witness your breakthrough, because now you rise, not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be, chosen, humbled, anointed, ready. Point 2, why chosen ones are always targeted? You're probably thinking, why me? Why always me? That question has echoed in the hearts of many chosen ones throughout history. It's not self-pity, it's a cry for clarity in a world that often feels too harsh for a soul like yours. But here's the truth you need to grasp. You're not being targeted because you're weak. You're being targeted because you're powerful, spiritually powerful. You carry something that the world doesn't fully understand but instantly reacts to, divine DNA. That's not just poetic language. Spiritually speaking, your essence carries a frequency, an energy that disrupts anything fake, manipulative, or dark. Science may call it vibrational resonance, but scripture and ancient wisdom have long acknowledged that some people are born with spiritual assignments encoded into their very being. You are one of them. When you walk into a room, something shifts. You don't even have to say a word. Your energy alone triggers something in others. Not because you're arrogant or dramatic, but because you reflect truth, real truth. And truth is uncomfortable for those who've built their lives around deception. Your authenticity exposes masks. Your quiet confidence challenges egos. Your refusal to gossip, follow the crowd, or participate in drama makes others uneasy. But that discomfort is not your burden to carry. It's a sign of your light doing what it was meant to do, reveal you were never made to fit in. That's why you don't. While others bend to social pressure, you stand firm. While others seek validation, you seek meaning. While others chase attention, you guard your peace. You don't dim your light to make others feel okay in the dark, and that makes you a threat. But not a threat in a violent way, a spiritual threat, a reminder, a mirror. The darkness doesn't attack what it doesn't fear. If you've been misunderstood, betrayed, or isolated lately, it's not a coincidence. It's spiritual warfare. And you are the front line. Even before you realized your calling, others did. That's why the attack started early. Maybe it was jealousy masked as teasing, or betrayal by those you loved most. Maybe you were overly kind, open-hearted, and gave people the benefit of the doubt, only to be used or mocked. That wasn't random. It was all part of a spiritual setup. They saw your anointing before you could walk in it, and their mission to break you before you bloomed. Let's talk about the humiliation rituals, the betrayals, public shame, or seasons of intense loneliness. These weren't just personal failures or unlucky streaks. They were orchestrated attempts to disconnect you from your power, to silence your voice, to convince you that you were broken, but it didn't work. In fact, it had the opposite effect. Instead of breaking you, it built you. That painful chapter refined your discernment. It taught you boundaries. It lit a fire in your soul that comfort never could. That dark night of the soul, it wasn't your end, it was your awakening. And now you're rising, not just surviving, but walking in your power. Your clarity scares those who used to manipulate you. Your confidence stings those who once controlled you. Your joy feels like revenge to those who tried to destroy your spirit. But here's the challenge, don't get bitter. Bitterness will only slow your flight. Get better. Let the pain sharpen your purpose, not harden your heart. Because here's the wildest twist. God will even use your enemies as teachers in your curriculum. They'll be the examples of what not to become. Let them sit with their regrets while you move forward in grace. Your growth, your glow, your peace, it all becomes their mirror. And the best part, the joke's not on you, it's on the enemy who looked at you gentle, humble, underestimated, and didn't realize you were a lion dressed as a lamb. You were chosen not because you were the loudest, the flashiest or the strongest, but because your soul could carry the weight of truth. And now that you're awake, the world better get ready. You're not here to fit in, you're here to transform. Point 3, public shame was meant to break you, but it awakened you. Oh, the embarrassment, the whispers, the judgmental stares. People love a scandal, especially when it isn't theirs. And when it's yours, they treat it like primetime television, popcorn in hand, eager to see your collapse. They thought that stripping you of your dignity in front of everyone would leave you crushed, humiliated, begging for acceptance. What they didn't realize was that your silence wasn't weakness, it was preparation. They mistook your stillness for surrender, when really you were just stepping aside to let God do the heavy lifting. What looked like isolation was actually incubation. You weren't shrinking, you were sinking with your purpose, sinking with truth. You weren't hiding in shame, you were healing in silence. While they laughed and swapped stories about your fall, something divine was being constructed behind the curtain of your pain. You were downloading wisdom that isn't found in the spotlight, but in the shadows. You were being taught lessons that applause can't teach and attention can't buy. You weren't defeated, you were being redesigned, spiritually rewired, emotionally recalibrated, mentally elevated. And when you stopped defending yourself, it wasn't because you had no defense, it was because you realized some people weren't worth the explanation. Not everyone deserves access to your energy, your story, or your truth. Silence in that moment was your power, because truth doesn't always need a microphone, it just needs time. And time has a way of revealing what was real and what was rehearsed. God wasn't punishing you, He was protecting you. He was revealing who was truly for you and who was just acting like they were. That moment of public shame, that wasn't your downfall, it was your unveiling, an unmasking of the false alliances and superficial affections you once mistook for love. You didn't lose your value, you lost illusions. You shed fake smiles, fair weather friends, and love that came with fine print, and yes, it broke your heart. Because no one tells you that growing stronger often starts with feeling weaker. That progress sometimes arrives dressed as pain. But pain has a strange gift, it makes you crave something real. And that craving leads you deeper into yourself, into truth, into God. It strips away your need to be liked and replaces it with a hunger to be whole. From a psychological perspective, what you experienced might fall under the term post-traumatic growth. It's a phenomenon where individuals, after enduring major life challenges, actually grow in unexpected ways. They emerge more resilient, more focused, and often more spiritually aware. Studies have shown that people who go through public embarrassment or betrayal often gain clarity, deepen their sense of purpose, and reprioritize their values. Like a phoenix, you didn't rise despite the fire, you rose of it. That shame didn't bury you. It cracked the shell wide open and let your higher self step forward. A version of you that no longer seeks validation, no longer begs for belonging. So let them talk, let them rehash your past like it's still relevant. Let them press rewind while you press play, because while they're still gossiping about your breakdown, you're already living your breakthrough. And spoiler alert, it's not just a comeback story, it's a redemption arc. One so unexpected, so powerful, that the very people who mocked you will have no choice but to watch in stunned silence as the one they tried to bury becomes the one they can't ignore. Point 4, your discernment activated mid-ritual, and it wasn't a coincidence. 1 minute you're curled up on the bathroom floor, heartbroken, drained and drowning in sorrow, your tears merging with the cold bathroom tiles like a silent agreement between your pain and the physical world. The next minute, you're wide-eyed, awakened, side-eyeing that so-called best friend who ghosted you right when you needed them most. That moment of awareness isn't overreaction, it isn't melodrama. It's discernment, the divine kind. What you're experiencing is a spiritual download, a heavenly update to your soul's operating system, and it's installing right in the middle of your heartbreak. You didn't hallucinate it, you didn't overthink it, you evolved. God often allows what feels like public humiliation or personal collapse to awaken parts of us we didn't know were asleep. The betrayal wasn't punishment, it was revelation. In spiritual language, this is what's often called a sacred rite disguised as heartbreak. Throughout the Bible, God used moments of rejection and ridicule as the setting for powerful transformations. Look at Joseph, sold by his brothers into slavery, only to rise and rule over Egypt. Or David, mocked and underestimated until he took down Goliath and became king. What looked like shame was actually divine shaping. Humiliation in this sacred sense is heaven's boot camp. It scrapes the ego, breaks our attachments, and reveals what's real by violently removing what's not. It's not just a breakdown, it's a spiritual detox. And once the blindfold slips, you no longer see the world through rose-colored illusions. Energy becomes your language. The same friends you defended suddenly feel off. Conversations feel shallow. Compliments sound rehearsed. It's not because you've changed into something cynical. It's because your spirit is finally tuned in. You're no longer fooled by charm or consistency. You recognize alignment. Your spiritual senses, once dull and clouded by hope, have sharpened into tools of truth. You stop confusing loyalty with proximity. Just because someone was there doesn't mean they were you. You no longer decode red flags with hope. Instead of translating warning signs into neutral tones, you now heed them. You understand that some people celebrated your suffering. Some checked in not to comfort you, but to confirm your destruction. But this wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy. Your spirit picked up on what your logic couldn't yet explain. And as your discernment grew, so did your detachment. Biblically, many chosen individuals were isolated before they were elevated. Elijah was fed by ravens in the wilderness. Jesus fasted alone in the desert. These weren't punishments, they were sanctification zones. You too were pulled away, not rejected, but redirected. What the enemy meant to shame you, God used to shape you. That fire didn't burn you, it refined you. Your heartbreak was holy ground. Now you can sense deceit before words are spoken. You feel envy behind the smile. You hear the tone behind the praise. This isn't paranoia. It's prophetic perception. You've learned to trust your gut, not because it's emotional, but because it's spiritual. The voice you once ignored, it's your internal compass, your God-given GPS. It doesn't ask for evidence, it just knows. You no longer beg for inclusion where you don't belong. You stop trying to fit into spaces that can't contain your calling. You don't need validation. You walk in confirmation. You build your own table, serve your own peace, and live in alignment with truth. And you don't just see through people anymore, you see them. You've ascended, not in arrogance, but in awareness. The ritual wasn't your end, it was your initiation. And now you walk not as the broken, but as the awakened. Point 5. They couldn't finish what they started because you had divine protection. Let's be real, they tried it. Oh, they really did. Some smiled right in your face while plotting your downfall behind closed doors. Others burned the midnight oil not for their own growth, but for your demise, driven by envy and insecurity. A few weren't just hoping you'd lose, they wanted your soul crushed, your identity erased, your dreams dissolved into dust. And then there were those who feared your light so much, they didn't just want to see it dim, they wanted to snuff it out completely. But here's the twist they never saw coming. You were never fighting alone. You had divine protection wrapped around you like an invisible shield. Every plan they crafted in the dark was met with a force they couldn't see and definitely couldn't defeat. Every time a lie was whispered to tarnish your name, every attempt to block your progress, every moment of spiritual warfare launched in secret, something stepped in. That something wasn't luck, it wasn't random, it wasn't just your strong will. It was divine orchestration. You had backup from the beginning, before you even knew your purpose, before you ever discovered the power of prayer, before you learned how to say no with conviction. There were angels already assigned to your name. They weren't just watching over you. They were fighting for you, shielding you from harm, canceling out the curses, breaking the snares, turning every attempt to destroy you into fuel for your rise. What you called gut instinct when you cut off toxic people was actually divine guidance. What felt like coincidence when plans fell through was God's hand rerouting your path. Science might call it intuition, and psychology might label it projection or trauma response. But what science can't measure is the moment that unseen car missed your vehicle by inches, or how your name got cleared just when false accusations started gaining traction. That wasn't just your inner strength kicking in, that was grace showing up when you needed it most. Chosen ones don't stay down for long. You might fall, yes, but you don't stay fallen. You don't just recover, you transform. Each trial chisels you. Each betrayal refines your discernment. Each heartbreak carves out a deeper space for compassion and power. The pain didn't come to break you, it came to build you. What they meant to bury you actually planted you, and you grew. Through the cracks, through the chaos, through every setback. That's not luck. That's divine order at work. And now, while they sit back stunned, wondering why their sabotage didn't stick, why their gossip lost traction, why you keep elevating, you walk with wisdom. Stronger, sharper, radiating the kind of resilience that makes demons tremble and doubters disappear. You're not just a survivor, you are a living, breathing sign that favor is real, that unseen battles are won by unseen hands, that no weapon formed against the chosen will ever prosper, no matter how carefully it's crafted. So don't question the path, don't second-guess the detours or delays. Keep rising, keep trusting. You are covered by forces bigger than fear. You've got angels on assignment, purpose in your veins, and destiny at your back. Let them keep watching, because the glow up, it's only just begun. Point 6. After the humiliation comes revelation and rewards. See, after every crucifixion, after every betrayal, every heartbreak, every moment you felt like life ripped you apart, comes a resurrection. That lowest point in your life wasn't your final chapter, it was a plot twist, a divine setup disguised as a breakdown. What you thought was punishment, it was preparation, a holy recalibration, the silence, the isolation, the pain. It wasn't hell having its way with you, it was heaven refining you. You weren't being buried, you were being planted deep in the soil of transformation so that when you rose, you wouldn't just survive, you'd thrive. Because now, look at you, you've risen with new eyes. You're not naive like before. You can spot deception wrapped in a smile. You sense energy that words try to disguise. You've become lighter, yes, but not because the pain disappeared, but because you released the illusions. That need to be understood by everyone, gone. That habit of explaining your worth to people who never valued you, finished. You've gained a kind of wisdom that only comes from walking through fire and refusing to smell like smoke afterward. And make no mistake, this isn't just a spiritual pep talk. Psychology backs it up. Researchers who study post-traumatic growth have found that people who endure and overcome major trials often come out the other side with a stronger sense of purpose, increased compassion, and deeper spiritual insight. In fact, a 2006 study published in The found that many individuals who experience extreme life disruptions actually report positive changes afterward, such as a renewed appreciation for life, greater personal strength, and a stronger connection to something greater than themselves. What you've gone through wasn't wasted. It was the furnace that refined your soul. And now that your spirit has been elevated, the material world is catching up. Divine connections, people who see you for who you are, not who they can use you to be, are on their way. Opportunities will start showing up that you didn't chase. Resources will flow. Not because you begged, but because you aligned. That moment when the check clears at the last second. Or someone randomly shows up to support your dream. That's not luck, that's alignment. That's heaven's version of a standing ovation. This is vindication season, not petty revenge, but divine justice. You passed the test that many fail, keeping your heart clean in a dirty war. You didn't lash out, you didn't become a reflection of your enemies. You let grace be your armor and truth be your sword. That's why your rise won't be quiet, it'll be visible, it'll be undeniable, because when God decides to honor you, he doesn't do it in the dark. He does it in a way that silences the lies, confuses your doubters, and magnifies his glory through your story. So now, rise, not timidly, boldly, like someone who knows the tomb couldn't hold them, like someone who understands that the pain wasn't their prison, it was their passageway. This is your divine comeback. And trust me, it's just getting started. Point 7, you're not meant to hide, you're meant to lead. Chosen one, let's take a deeper look at the truth behind your suffering, because it wasn't just random pain, it was a sacred rite of passage. What you experienced wasn't simply hardship, it was a spiritual initiation, a divine setup dressed as a breakdown. Think of ancient cultures where future warriors, shamans, or leaders were taken through grueling tests. Tests meant to strip away the ego, burn off the weakness, and awaken the deeper self. That's exactly what happened to you. Your betrayal, your rejection, your loneliness. They were never signs of divine abandonment. They were the tools God used to refine you like gold in a furnace. And what emerged wasn't a victim, it was a vessel. A spiritual warrior equipped with authority, forged in the fires of affliction. Let's be real, suffering can either crush you or crown you. In your case, it did both, but the crown came last. Every moment you questioned your worth, every time someone walked away, and every time you cried in silence, thinking no one saw you, that was your Gethsemane. And yet, like Christ, you endured, and now? You don't carry pity, you carry power. You wield a spiritual sword, not made of metal, but of resilience, vision, and discernment. That sword was sharpened by every trial, betrayal, and tear. You don't just walk into rooms now, you shift atmospheres. Not because you're loud, but because you carry the weight of spiritual authority. You were never meant to shrink. That was the old script written by people who were uncomfortable with your light. But God ripped that script up and handed you a new one, written in fire and purpose. You were chosen to lead, not blend in, to guide, not just survive. You're now a lighthouse for others, someone who knows the terrain of pain and can speak to it with wisdom. Your story is no longer just yours, it's a survival manual for those still in their storm. The scars you carry, they're not symbols of failure, they're divine credentials. They prove you've been through something real, and the world may try to hush you to make you feel like talking about your pain is too much, too heavy, too raw, but heaven begs to differ. Heaven says, speak, speak healing, speak life, speak power. Because someone's breakthrough is locked inside your testimony. Your silence would be a betrayal to your survival. You didn't crawl through hell just to come out quiet. You came out with a voice that shakes chains off people's souls. Let's be clear. What you went through was never just about you. It was never punishment. It was preparation. That humiliation ritual wasn't to break you permanently. It was to build the kind of strength that books can't teach and sermons can't fake. Your discernment, it was born in the battlefield, not the classroom. That's why you see through people now. That's why you can't be fooled like you once were. Your eyes are open and your spirit is battle-tested. And now, chosen one, you lead, not because you're flawless, but because you refuse to stay broken. That is the power of divine reversal. What was meant to bury you became the very ground you rose from. So wear your invisible crown with honor, not the glittery one that fades under pressure, but the one heaven placed on you when you didn't break. You're no longer in survival mode, you're in leadership mode. So take your sword, take your story, and lead others out of their fire. Stay awake, stay divine, stay dangerous. The world needs you now more than ever.